Thanks, Anissa. Appreciate that. And thank you all for being with us this afternoon. This webinar is going to be a review of the commercial acquisition resources that are available for you with some examples and demonstrations of how you can use them. We've got a great panel from well, I guess I'll let you guys announce yourselves. They're from DCMA, but we've got Jonathan Fox and Lindsay McCarthy. I think Ben will be on here shortly, but Jonathan and Lindsay are going to be the stars of the show today. So I'll let you both introduce yourselves, and then you can kind of take it from here, because this is going to be a great webinar for me because I've only seen this one time, so I might have my questions as well. So Jonathan, Lindsay, thanks for being with us today. Please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Frank. So yeah, this is Jonathan Fox. As it says, I'm a contract price cost analyst with DCMA Commercial Item Group in the Northeast Pricing Team. I've been with the group since just about 2017, having worked with DCMA for about 6 or 7 years before that, and with the CPSR team, and then as a price cost analyst with the Boston CMO. I'm currently, I live a little outside of Boston with a couple kids and my wife. And yeah, that's pretty much me in a nutshell. Lindsay, you want to just introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Lindsay McCarthy. I am a contract price cost analyst, also with DCMA's Commercial Item Group. I joined the group in 2016. Prior to that, I worked at Hanscom Air Force Base as a contract specialist and a contract cost price analyst. I currently live outside of Boston as well. I live with my husband and my 10-month-old son.
Great. Okay, so I think we're going to just jump into this. I'm going to I'll stay on the screen just for now. How about that? And then I'll share it after the little intro, after we kind of go through the intro here. So first and foremost, let me thank everyone for attending today's presentation. Normally at this point, for my own personal interest, I would kind of poll the audience to gauge people's commercial acquisition or their commercial item determination background. But instead, let me just say that, the nice thing about this resource, it's intended for all experience levels, whether you're actively working commercial acquisitions or someone who just wants to learn a little more about the topic. There's plenty of knowledge to be gained within the resource. So with that said, let me first provide you with a general background on the Commercial Item Group, or we'll shorten that to CIG pretty much from now on. The 2013 National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA, mandated the creation of a cadre of experts within the DoD to support the commercial item recommendations and pricing. So after that, we had an initial 18 months or so of an initial pilot program. The CIG became fully operational in June of 2016. In its current state, the CIG is segregated into 6 centers located in Boston, Philadelphia, St. Petersburg, Indianapolis, Denver, and Phoenix. And currently we have a staff around 65 price cost analysts and engineers. So since the CIG's inception, industry outreach and providing support and resources to our government counterparts have been vital initiatives within the group. Back in early 2018, in the spirit of engaging more with industry, the CIG began formulating a plan to create a collection of commercial resources for industry. As the CIG progressed with this effort, it became more and more evident that this resource would be beneficial to our own internal government customers as well. So the CIG eventually kind of teamed up with DAU, which is the Defense Acquisition University, and this initial concept branched out further into developing an interactive web-based commercial resource covering numerous aspects of the commercial acquisition. Again, that can be utilized by both industry and government partners alike. So at this point, before we go further, let me just say, yeah, so this document, this resource, it attempts to educate and establish better expectations and provide some general guidance and assistance. As this was built to be an interactive resource, if you haven't done so already, it helps to go in and play around in it. So walk through the definitions, compare the commercial clauses to what you have in your contract, understand the roles and responsibilities of the different parties, etc. And while we have the utmost confidence in the tool and its ability to provide sound guidance, please don't hesitate to reach out to the CIG with any questions or concerns or comments you do have on it. So regarding outcomes for today, foremost, it's our hope that everyone kind of leaves the webinar with a better understanding of the capabilities within the resource, and added bonus would be increasing your knowledge base of commercial acquisitions within the government and becoming a little more familiar with the commercial ag group in general. Also, just before we dive in, as a general legal statement regarding any opinions presented here today outside of what is explicitly like covered in the tool, those opinions are Lindsay and my own, and they do not like overtly reflect those of DCMA and DoD as a whole. So now that we've covered our legal basis, I think we can navigate over to the resource. So let's go here. Sorry, everyone. Let me just pull this over. There we go. Okay. So, so what you're looking at right now is this is the commercial acquisition resource site. This went live on February 25th of this year. You can access this tool through DAU's public webpage, and you'll find it within the Cool Tools catalog. All right. So, so we can't really begin to understand commercial items and commercial services and their place in the acquisition ecosystem without first kind of reviewing and considering the FAR definitions. So this first section of the resource tackles the commercial definition as found in FAR 2.101. Regarding our approach to the section, we actually made a conscious effort to include an example of every commercial item paragraph and subparagraph in the definition. For instance, we make sure to include both types of commercial modifications in paragraph 3 in order to provide the audience with a full coverage of all aspects of the definition. It's important to note, though, that the examples provided here are given simply to show the thought process and the types of information used in making a determination. The examples are not policy or firm guidance from USG. Rather, it's simply an attempt by us to pull together, important information that we consider to be beneficial to know and include in a commercial package. With regards to the most, to what I think everyone mostly considers an expansive FAR definition, if you're familiar with it, let me say that based on the general CIG experience, some of the definitions are more prevalent than others within the commercial acquisitions. So with that in mind, and for the sake of time today, I'm going to focus primarily on the paragraphs 1, 3, and 5 within the commercial definition. But again, please know that examples are available to explore for all the different paragraphs within the definition in this resource. So in this definition section, you will see a similar kind of format throughout the paragraphs where you're given first the description, item description or service description, some basic information. Then in part 1, you'll be presented with pre-solicitation market research results, followed by part 2, which speaks directly to the commercial item definition or the assertion, any pertinent market research, analysis, discoveries, and lastly, each paragraph concludes with a summary as to why the item or service is determined to meet the commercial definition. So let's jump into this now. So the first definition we're going to jump into is of a type. So as you can see, the first, what we're looking at here is a ruggedized external hard drive. So under the subject here 2 line, you'll see the first section is to review the item in accordance with FAR 10.002B, which outlines commercial item market research procedures, and FAR 2.101, which we know identifies the definition. And we're doing this to identify if commercial items are available to meet the government's need or could be modified to meet the government's need. So going down to part 1, just do this. Here we delve into the summary of findings based on the pre-solicitation market research performed. This market research lays the foundation for our commercial item and acquisition as a whole. So here we're gaining a general understanding of the industry, the proposed commercial products application, its end use, general commercial specifications. We're trying to identify manufacturers, distributors, marketplaces in which they operate, and notably, we're also verifying that if the SCID already exists for the item. From this pre-solicitation findings on this hard drive that we're looking at, we're able to establish the hard drive market. We identify several of the characteristics and differences in the commercial market. We see what types of customizations are publicly available, and we confirm that there is no existing CIDs of the item. So we're going to scroll down to part 2 here. So in this part, we're identifying the exact paragraph language of the definition. So you can read it. Any item that is of a type customary used by the general public or by non-governmental entities for purposes other than government purposes. And for I has been sold, leased, or licensed to the general public, or for double I has been offered for sale, leased, or licensed to the general public. So as a result of the pre-solicitation market research, we are already able to establish that the item is like of a type ruggedized hard drive used by the general public for non-governmental purposes. And we did this by finding similar products in the current market that are used for storage solutions in like the medical and construction and oil industry fields. In this section, you also have a technical comparison table. This is in table 1 here. And you're looking at the comparison between the proposed hard drive and another unit available in the market. So in review of this table 1, pay special attention to the comparison categories you have here. So the column right over here, you want to pay special attention to the technical capabilities, storage capacity, ruggedized characteristics, drive speed, hard drive interface. These are all significant and essential characteristics of a hard drive, which in turn will form a solid basis for comparison between the units. So you just want to make sure that the comparison categories are meaningful to the item you are reviewing. So working our way through the data, you'll see the first bullet identifies the function of ruggedized hard drives, storing data. The next bullet talks to the ruggedization process and the use of epoxy as a stabilizer within that unit. The next bullet talks to the bullet 3 talks to the drive speed and the difference between the comparison unit. So here we can perform market research, and we use that market research to validate that the drive speed is available in the commercial marketplace and that the increased speed does not alter the overall function of the item. Lastly here, I want to point out that the vendor did provide recent sales invoices demonstrating that the proposed hard drive has been sold to non-government customers with a commercial end use. So you have the summary section here, again, pulling all the market research and analysis in part 1 and 2 together. The ruggedized hard drive is determined to be commercial in accordance with 1I of the commercial definition. Market research assisted in identifying the different commercial industries, the uses of those uses of that in the industries. It aided in authenticating the hard drive as an of a type product, customary used by non-governmental purposes, by non-governmental entities. And the other important finding was, of course, that the proposed item had been sold to the general public as illustrated by the commercial invoices that were provided. So that is definition 1I. We're going to just go on to 1II here. So the second subparagraph for this definition is an of a type item that are being offered for sale to the general public. So we're going to use the same pre-solicitation market research in part 1 that we found above, and we're carrying that forward for this example. So we get right into part 2 here. The technical comparison. We have a similar, so you're provided a hard drive. This one is being compared to another hard drive. If you paid attention to the part numbers, you'll see that the actual item we're comparing to in this one is the same as the previous example. But so we know this item has been sold commercial marketplace based on what we have just, based on just going through 1I. But if you were operating with a clean slate, we'd want to confirm the comparison item is supported with commercial sales. With the same characteristics between, let's see, the same characteristics of the hard drive for the first 4 categories here. You'll just want to ensure that the standard characteristics, and these are like standard characteristics and parameters in the marketplace and not unique to these 2 hard drives. Market research can also be used to review the updated processor and maximum memory capabilities. And you have some differences here, but obviously in general, having an updated processor or increased memory is not typically a factor that would change the of a type categorization of these hard drives. What is unique for this hard drive specifically, though, is that there is no sales data, or there was no sales data provided. So in light of this fact, what do we need to do? We need to confirm that the subject hard drive is being offered for sale to the general public and is listed in the vendor's catalog. And that is addressed in this final bullet right down here below. So summary for this, pre-solicitation market research was able to validate the item as an of a type item, customary use for non-governmental purposes by non-governmental entities. Technical evaluation was performed on similar hard drive, and the similar hard drive was supported with a sale invoice to commercial customers, and the subject hard drive was verified to being offered for sale to the vendor, to the general public. So looking back for this first paragraph of the commercial definition, it's important to remember that the of a type language in the definition provides a broad latitude to the contracting officer. This is purposeful in nature and meant to encourage acquisitions of commercial items by the department. But with that said, it's paramount to understand that in determining that an item or service is commercial, it has vast ramifications throughout the DoD, as far as if an item or service has been determined commercial, to overturn that determination requires HCA or head of contracting activity approval. So again, therefore, all determinations must be properly supported and justified. One last go back to hit some of the key questions or concepts here, considerations for this paragraph. Ensure you really understand the item, compare the proposed item to commercial market options. Are there differences? How does this affect the form, fit, or function? Know who the buyers, sellers, manufacturers are, not only for the proposed item, but also the similar to items. Request commercial non-governmental invoices. If invoices are provided, ensure you understand the items and use, and consider context and industry practices. So at this point, now we're going to skip down to paragraph 3 in the definition. So we'll be looking at 3I, customary modifications. Again, we are utilizing the same kind of baseline information from the pre-solicitation market research in part 1, as we did in the prior examples, because we were looking at a ruggedized hard drive here. Once more, this market research establishes the hard drives market, identifies the vendors, supports that similar products are used for non-governmental purposes, and confirms that there's no prior CIDs. So in part 2 here, we go into the definition. So any item that would satisfy a criterion expressed in paragraph 1 or 2 of the definition, but for I, modifications of a type customary available in the commercial marketplace. So there's a similar trajectory or approach here, in that the comparison between a subject hard drive. In this case, we're comparing it to the base hard drive, which has been sold. So this base hard drive has been sold in the commercial marketplace. So if you review this comparison table, there are differences in the storage capacity and drive speed, which again, we had evaluated in the prior paragraphs, but if this was a standalone case, market research would need to be performed on any of and all of the differences highlighted in the comparison table. Instead, for this example, we're going to pay special attention to the deviations in color, overall length, and those extra markings. So this is where we'll want to spend some time researching if these are customary modifications and ensure that they are offered in the commercial marketplace. The resulting analysis showed that while the color, size, and markings, these modifications for the subject hard drive were made to meet military requirements, these modifications were not military unique and are available in the commercial marketplace. Going into another key difference from the proposed hard drive and the comparison hard drive here. So the comparison one is not specifically listed for sale by the vendor in either its catalog or on its website. So the reading into this, the vendor stated that the item is categorized as a modified version of a base model, and this base model hard drive is offered on its for sale on its catalog and has substantiating commercial sales data that it can provide. So our task now for the market research then is to ensure it is customary for the vendor to customize these hard drives for individual needs, which will aid in the explanation as to why this exact configuration of the hard drive might not explicitly be offered for sale. In this example, the vendor supplied additional supporting documentation showing commercial sales for various configurations of that baseline hard drive, with varying speed and size and color and markings to demonstrate that it's customary that they do this and that there's to support their commercial assertion. So down in the summary section here, so we have concurrence that the ruggedized hard drive is commercial in accordance with 3I of the commercial item definition. Base model has been sold commercially. It can be modified to meet the solicitation requirements for any customer. However, the modifications for this effort were substantiated through independent market research and contractor supplied sales data, illustrating that the modifications are not unique to the government and are customarily available in the common commercial marketplace. So we're going to move on to 3II, which is minor modifications here. So the ruggedized hard drive is, for this section, contains a military grade hardware encryption. Same basis here, we're skipping ahead to part 2. We're leveraging the part 1 kind of pre-solicitation market research. So for this item, the definition is any item that would satisfy criterion 1 or 2 of the definition, but for minor modifications of a type not customarily available in the commercial marketplace made to meet government requirements. So the focus for this example is minor modifications of a type that are not customarily available in the commercial marketplace. In reviewing the comparison table here, you can identify or flag these potential minor modifications within the comparison table. Size, color, storage capacity. Those are all, as we know now, are customary available modifications. Again, market research can help you get to that point. Storage capacity and drive speed are all within, of a type commercial ranges as verified earlier in example 1. But again, if you needed more work on that, you could perform your own market research, but you'd get to the same point. But for this, the military grade hardware encryption is something we want to investigate further. So, so after performing some market research on that, we've determined, we discovered that the encryption is a security enhancement. It does require physical modifications to the hard drive to add this tamper-resistant casing, fingerprint recognition pad, or the common access card slot. While these modifications require some physical alterations, i.e. changes to the product's form, the overall fit and function remain unchanged. So additionally, while hardware encryption modifications are available in the commercial marketplace, this specific security encryption is unique to the government. One final point to support this minor modification claim is that the encryption modification is tied to only 4% of the overall unit price, okay? So we have it in that bullet. Side note into that regulation, in accordance with FAR 15403, if the value of the minor modification exceeds the greater of TINA or 5% of the total contract price at the time of the contract award, then certified cost of pricing data for the minor modification portion of the item is required. If the value does not exceed this, then the minor modification is exempt from requirement of submission of certified cost of pricing data. So in summary, here, the ruggedized external hard drive with a military grade hardware encryption is determined commercial. Subject item is similar in form, fit, function to the commercial of a type items. In addition, the military unique modification is determined to be minor because the modification does not significantly alter the core functionality of the hard drive, and the value of the modification does not warrant the submission of certified cost of pricing data. Again, just kind of following the same pursuit, key questions or concepts, considerations in this area for this paragraph. Current industry practices allow for complete customization modifications. That's become a standard kind of commercial practice these days. So it's important to note that modifications can be extensive and still meet this part of the commercial definition. understand the comparison item and exact details of the modification, research the manufacturing process. Are the manufacturing lines for the product the same or different if it's a military or a commercial item? Ask yourself, does the supplier perform similar modifications for non-governmental customers? And do manufacturers of the item routinely modify them to meet customer needs? All right, so we get to change it up now, and we're going to head down to definition paragraph 5. So this is for services in support of a commercial item. So here we delve into a services definition, and specifically we're looking at the power takeoff or PTO shaft repair service. So as we no longer looking at ruggedized hard drive, there's a new market research section provided here, but I hope you understand that we're still attempting to answer the same kind of pre-solicitation questions as we did with the hard drive examples. We're just doing it for these services now. So pre-solicitation market research gained an understanding of the basic core function of the part, which is to transmit power from the engine to the accessory drive gearbox. That's kind of a common requirement for all aircrafts. Excuse me, the market research also identified different manufacturers of PTO shafts and showed that customization of these shafts are common and commercially offered. So based on the insight from this pre-solicitation market research, a FAR Part 12 RFP was issued, as it was determined that commercial solutions are available to meet the government requirements for this effort. So going down to Part 2 here. So for this, again, installation services, maintenance services, repair services, training services, and other services. And this is from the reading of the definition, which is right down here. If such services are procured for support of an item referred to in paragraph 1, 2, 3, or 4 of this definition, regardless of whether such services are provided by the same source or at the same time as the item. And II, the source of the such services provides similar services to the general public under terms and conditions similar to those offered to the federal government. So here, we have it's a two-step evaluation here for this paragraph. And I want to stress the detailed analysis that, we kind of previously walked through and described and outlined in the prior examples for paragraphs 1 and 3. That is still required for the PTO shaft in this case. We need to still kind of put in the effort there, that front end effort there, to determine that that item's commercial, and then only then can you then begin to evaluate the commerciality of the PTO repair services. So that first criteria to meet is determining if the procured services are in support of a commercial item. In this case, the buying activity has determined the PTO shaft fits 3I paragraph of the definition, which is an item that has been modified to modification of a type customarily available in the commercial marketplace. Alternatively, if the item was found not to be commercial during this analysis, then obviously the services being evaluated would not fit the commercial definition in paragraph 5, okay? So in making this determination, the buying command relied on the information found in comparison table 1, which is right there, and market research indicating the speed range of the subject items fall within the commercial market range. And while the comparison parts have apparent, differences in color, length, and width, which is kind of highlighted down in this section, their core function and essential characteristics remain the same, which we know falls within that customary modification classification. So once the item's commerciality has been analyzed, the market research pivots to the second part of the requirement, ensuring that the vendor provides similar services under similar terms and conditions to the general public. So here in this example, the source provided commercial agreements it executed between the aircraft manufacturers, showing the services had been provided in the commercial marketplace before. In reviewing these agreements, we also were able to gain some insight into the terms and conditions that were proposed, and we could compare those. So, and the result of that was that we found the item to those terms and conditions to be similar and not tailored or unique for the government. So finishing up for this, in summary, so the repair service for the PTO shaft being procured are determined commercial in accordance with paragraph 5 of the definition based on 1, such services being procured are in support of a commercial item, which we identified as 3I in this case. And 2, the source of such services provided similar services to the general public, which that was illustrated by the commercial agreements and under terms and conditions similar to those offered to the federal government, which was verified in the T's terms and conditions review. So I think the key questions, concepts, considerations for this paragraph, be cognizant that, there are some military unique requirements that may require need for additional services that are outside of what is customary available to the general public. See if there's a previous CID on the product that the offered service is supporting. We can save a lot of time and effort if there's already a CID out there for the item. Thoroughly review the terms and conditions there, and then ask yourself, are there any government unique liability concerns, and would this affect the terms and conditions of the service? So that is the last definition I'll touch on today. Let me again just stress though that there's examples and there's examples for all paragraphs of the definition within this resource. So feel free to explore and check those out if you find yourself in any of these other kind of paragraphs that we didn't cover today. So with that, I'll turn it over to Lindsay now to go over the next section of the tool.
Okay, so the next section of this resource is called Government and Contractor Responsibilities in Making CIDs. The purpose of this section is for the user to be able to click into a scenario that we have outlined in Table 1 to learn more about what to do in a particular situation. So when you click on either the user or the acquisition phase that we have in the table of contents on the left, the tool is going to bring you to a description of a scenario and a list of any applicable FAR and DFARS regulations. That's going to explain what's required and why certain actions are taking place. Our intent here was to consolidate the various commercial regulations from the different FAR and DFARS subparts in one place. We thought this would be beneficial. You'll see as we start going through the scenarios, commercial topics can be found in FAR Part 10, 12, 15, 52, and all the corresponding DFARS and PGI subparts. You're also going to notice that many of the regulations overlap between the different users, but it's just that the scenario is written from a different user perspective. We've only outlined FAR, DFARS, and PGI references in this resource, so there may be additional agency-specific regulations that your office may need to follow. Those aren't going to be outlined in this resource. And finally, one last thing to note about the regulations that we have referenced is that as regulation language is updated, this resource is going to be as well. But just in case there's any delay with updating this tool, we suggest that if you're in this tool and you're looking at it, don't solely rely on the references that are included in here, but just confirm that the language is consistent with what is current. Okay, so going back over to the tool, the home screen of this section, we included below Table 1 2 references that we thought were important to note. The first one is that a prior commercial item determination issued by a DoD contracting officer may be relied upon for future procurements. And the second reference we have listed here is, even though this resource is focused on the commerciality determinations, you'll find that there are instances where commercial pricing is intertwined. This PGI guidance that we have listed here just stresses the importance of performing a detailed evaluation for certain commercial definitions, as well as when there's not sufficient market price history. So then Table 1, this is showing our 3 different users that we've identified. We have the government PCO, the prime contractor, and the subcontractor. If you're a government contracting officer, we think it might be beneficial for you to review the other contractors' scenarios and as well as vice versa. It may assist you in understanding why a contracting officer or a prime contractor is requesting certain information. So for the government contracting officer, we have 3 acquisition phases that you can learn more about. The pre-solicitation phase, which would be deciding whether to issue a solicitation using non-commercial or commercial procedures. The contractor pre-award objection to non-commercial solicitation. This would be when a contracting officer requests the submission of certified cost of pricing data and the contractor objects based on the commercial item exception. And lastly, when the contracting officer is evaluating the commerciality of subcontracts, what the contracting officer's responsibilities are. This would be when a prime contractor is under non-commercial procedures, but a subcontract item has been determined to be commercial by the prime. The next would be the 3 phases that we've outlined for the prime contractor. This would be the responsibilities when a prime contractor receives a commercial item solicitation, the responsibilities when they receive a non-commercial item solicitation, and finally, the prime's responsibility in performing an analysis of its subcontractor when the sub asserts that an item or service is a commercial item. And then we also have the acquisition phases outlined for subcontractors. We have 2 options here. The first is when a prime contractor is requesting a commercial item quote or proposal, and the responsibilities would kind of be the same for whether the prime's underneath commercial or non-commercial procedures with the government. And then the second one is when a prime contractor requests a proposal using non-commercial procedures, and the subcontractor, what their responsibilities are when they're objecting and are asserting commerciality. So we'll dive into the first user's responsibilities. So JB is scrolling down to the government contracting officers, the first phase, but what you can also do is click onto the table of contents, and if you want a particular acquisition phase, if you click on it, the tool just jumps you to that section. So for this first phase, the pre-solicitation, our scenario here is outlining the requirements of performing market research prior to releasing the solicitation. The government is required in FAR Part 10 to determine if commercial items are suitable to meet the agency's needs or could be incorporated at the component level. So if the government does find that there are commercial items available and the acquisition is exceeding $1 million, it is the contracting officer's responsibility to first determine in writing that the item or service meets the commercial item determination. They must include that determination in the contract file, and they must provide a copy of that determination to DCMA's commercial item group. This instruction has been recently added to DFARS PGI 212-102. So the commercial item group, we've developed a commercial item database. It's available to search for prior DoD commercial item determinations that you may rely on for future procurements of the exact same item. This database does include both commercial and non-commercial determinations. And another reference we have listed here, it's bullet 7. If the contracting officer has determined to use FAR Part 12 procedures, they should include the provision found at DFARS 252, 215, 7010 in solicitations for the acquisition of commercial items. This is just ensuring that the offer submits information regarding price reasonableness or other than certified cost or pricing data. The next scenario for the government PCO is when the contracting officer requests a non-commercial proposal and the contractor provides a written request for exemption based on the item meeting the commercial item definition. So the contracting officer is going to evaluate the assertion from the contractor, and they'll have 2 options. They'll either concur and follow those same responsibilities in making a written determination I just mentioned, or they won't grant the exception and they're going to require certified cost or pricing data be submitted. And then going to the last contracting officer scenario. This is when a prime contractor makes the commercial determination for a subcontract item. So even though it's the prime's responsibility here in making the determination for its subcontracts, the contracting officer is also responsible for evaluating any exemptions from certified cost or pricing data. So the contracting officer is going to evaluate the prime's determination, and previously mentioned they have 2 options. They're either going to concur with the determination and grant the exception, or they're going to still require certified cost or pricing data be submitted if it's above the threshold. So next we'll move on to the prime contractor's point of view. So the first scenario we have here is when they receive a commercial solicitation from the government. The responsibilities of the contractor would include responding to the solicitation requirements and supporting the price reasonableness of the offered price. a little out of scope for this resource because this resource is really focused on the commercial item determination aspect. But it is important to note that price reasonableness still needs to be substantiated, even if the item or service is determined to be commercial. The provision is listed here as a reference, DFARS 252, 215, 7010. It's required in FAR 12 solicitation, and it outlines information required by the offeror to support the proposed price. So just because an item has been determined commercial doesn't mean that pricing support isn't required or that the government is required to accept the proposed price without any justification. Moving on to the next scenario for the prime contractor. This would be when the prime contractor is receiving a non-commercial solicitation from the government. So what the prime contractor can do is submit a written request for exemption by asserting that their item or service is commercial. Just as discussed, the instructions for the written request is outlined in the commercial item exception, which states that the offeror shall submit prices for the same or similar item previously sold in the commercial market. The offeror can also provide the justification using a prior DoD contracting officer's commercial item determination for the exact same item or service. Another reference we have listed here, it is the proposal adequacy checklist. This also has requirements for the written request for exemption. It's found at item 18. So this is stating that the assertion must also include which definition the item or service meets and the basis for it, as well as providing a technical analysis between the proposed item and the commercial comparison item. So the CID examples section that Jonathan just walked us through, that's a really great resource for fulfilling this requirement. And also there's another section called justification for asserting commerciality, which will also go into detail about this as well to support your assertion. And the last scenario for the prime contractor, this is when the prime contractor's proposal is non-commercial, but the subcontracted items or services are. The prime contractor has kind of two options in this scenario. They're either going to make the determination before they request the quote from the contractor, or they request a non-commercial proposal submission. So when they make the determination before requesting a quote, the prime's going to perform market research and a technical analysis between the proposed and the comparison item, and they're going to include that determination in their proposal to the government. And the other scenario was when the subcontractor objects to using non-commercial procedures and the subcontractor asserts commerciality. So the prime contractor's responsibility is going to be to perform an independent assessment, and they include market research and that technical analysis, and they submit that determination to the government with their proposal if they agree with their subcontractor's assertion. If the prime doesn't agree that it is commercial, then they'll request their subcontractor to submit certified cost or pricing data if the proposed amount exceeds the threshold. And the final user we've outlined in this responsibilities section is from the subcontractor's point of view. So for the most part, all of the previously described information is found in this section, including all of the same FAR and DFARS references. There is an added reference for subcontract price evaluation. So just a quick summary that the subcontractor can submit a commerciality assertion to the prime. The prime contractor is going to evaluate and make their determination of commerciality for the subcontracted item or service. And then the contracting officer will evaluate the prime's determination. Commercial price reasonableness will still need to be justified even if the subcontractor isn't justifying that their item meets the commercial item definition in the case that the prime or the government has already made that determination of commerciality. So that concludes the responsibility section. The next section that we'll move on to is the justification for asserting commerciality. So this is kind of supplementing that prior section describing the responsibilities. It corresponds to the acquisition phase when the prime or subcontractor is objecting to a solicitation that is requesting non-commercial items or certified cost or pricing data. So there are 8 different types of data we've listed here that a contractor should be willing to provide to substantiate their assertion. And then as the government contracting officer, when you look at this list, these are the types of data you should be reviewing or requesting in order for you to be able to perform your evaluation. It's not an all-encompassing list. Don't limit your justification to only these items. We just wanted to provide kind of a commonly requested items when reviewing commercial assertions. The government may also request other information regarding your specific proposal that isn't listed here as well. So this really is intended to assist with streamlining the acquisition for commercial items. We're hoping that if a contractor provides this type of data up front, then less time would be spent asking for this information and tracking down the data. And one other note too, each commercial item definition may need slightly different information to substantiate in the assertion as well. And going back to that, the CID examples section that Jonathan went through, that's a really great resource that touches upon the types of information that you should submit for each one of the definitions. So I'll go over a few of the data points that we've included in here. But first of all, just wanted to note, understanding what the item is and how it functions is a key element in supporting your assertion. This allows the government or the prime contractor to be able to perform its own market research to find industry data, similar type items, all to be able to form the conclusion of commerciality. So without the description of the item, the function, the physical and performance characteristics, sometimes it can be very difficult to perform an evaluation. So some of the key elements that are listed here, number 1, we have listed the non-governmental purposes. This is a significant data point to provide, whether it's for the proposed item, for the similar of a type item. The specific non-governmental purpose or the end use of the item, it's really essential. If you just provide the customer name, sometimes it's not enough evidence to support the non-governmental purpose because some customers may have both military and commercial platforms. The number 3, this is providing information on how the general public customarily uses the proposed or similar item. We don't want to just rely on marketing data or advertisements that you may find online. We find that just because an item is listed in a catalog or if you can just find it online, it doesn't necessarily mean that the general public is customarily using the item. Number 5, we've mentioned a couple times as we've been going through this tool, is that you can provide a prior signed DoD contracting officer's commercial item determination. If you don't have a copy of the CID, you can provide a point of contact. The reviewer may be able to reach out and obtain it. Also wanted to note here that an awarded FAR 12 contract doesn't fulfill this requirement. A commercial item determination may not have been issued, even though it is awarded on a FAR 12, the standard form 1449 contract. This is in the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2018. It's not incorporated yet into regulation. So we wouldn't expect just to have the FAR 12 contract as the only substantiating evidence of commerciality. A commercial item determination will need to be written. And number 8, just wanted to emphasize providing that detailed technical analysis, the side-by-side comparison that you saw in those CID examples, comparing the proposed item to the similar item. We want to see the explanation of how the items are similar and also describing any differences. Including technical specification sheets, drawings, and pictures is always helpful. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Jonathan for the next section.
Okay. Yeah, I know we're getting closer to the time, so I'm going to kind of go as quickly as I can through the sections. I think so. This next section, DCMA commercial item group support. So this just talks about the capabilities. Most notably, you know, we have CIG contracting officers now available to make CIDs. We maintain a database for prior CIDs. We have the commercial item group's webpage here. that highlights other resources available. So on the CIG's webpage, you'll see trainings, frequently asked questions, how to request support from us, any upcoming events we are participating in. We have a link to the DPAP commercial handbook, a CID template, and much, much more. So if you are not familiar with the CIG homepage, if you go down to the references section down here and look at the PGI 212-102, if you go there, that will navigate you to the CIG's homepage. So this also has a list of documents that we need to, when you're requesting our support, that we're looking to receive. So, you know, I want to just caveat this title, this section here, just at this point, we are only receiving requests for support through from government contracting officers and not fielding requests from industry at this point. But the list is pretty self-explanatory. You know, if we're working a case, these are the documents we're looking for. Have these documents, you know, if they're available, you know, and you can submit them with your submission. You know, it'll shorten the lead time it'll take for us to get a request assigned to a CIG member and cut down on the analysis time. And also, if you don't have these documents here available when you're requesting our support, if you start the, you know, that request for information process with a vendor, that kind of just jumpstarts the process of obtaining this information. And a major hurdle for this commercial item group is establishing actionable data to begin the review. So it will generally allow for the final work product to be issued faster, which is the whole point of commercial streamlined processes and acquisitions. So references here, I don't think we need to really cover too much. We received our determination authority letter on January 9th, 2019. So that's with the CIG having warranted contracting officers. I'll just reference one point. The letter doesn't really specify is that, you know, we're not taking away the PCO ability to make determinations here. Their role in the determination, if they feel so inclined, doesn't need to change. They can still make that determination. It just, the CIG's role in the process has changed. You know, we can make these determinations. We can ease the burden of the buying activity. We can mitigate risk, you know, provide better consistency within the commercial review process. And you know, when we provide that, and we are maintaining that central repository for determinations that we can rely on in the future. Moving down to 3, same thing. If you go to the CIG web page, it outlines the current review thresholds and DFARS. DFARS requires the CID to be made on FAR 12 acquisitions exceeding 1 million. That's what we have in place for prime FAR 12 commercial determinations. For price reasonableness and subcontractor commercial requests, the threshold we have set is 2 million. For any other cases under those thresholds, we can definitely assist in asking the right questions or provide mentorship or offer insight into the thought process that we go through. So moving on to the next one, DCMA CIG participation in CPSRs. Those not familiar with CPSRs, it stands for Contractor Purchasing System Reviews. This is a group within DCMA that reviews and approves contractors' purchasing systems. So within the scope of the purchasing system, the CIG has some expertise specifically in regards to market research, commercial item determinations, technical evaluation, price analysis. The CIG augments the CPSR teams in its review of these purchase files in these specific areas that we outlined, and we'll also help them, assist them with the policies and procedures review and ensuring that they're in accordance with the present statutory regulations. Okay, one last handoff to Lindsay for the final clause section of the resource.
Yep, this one will be quick. The final 2 sections, we've just compiled a list of all of the FAR and DFARS provision and clauses that you see in FAR Part 12 and DFARS Part 212. Just wanted to note that tailoring clauses or including any additional terms and conditions should be consistent with customary commercial practices. But other than that, this is just a list of all of those provision and clauses. So with that, this concludes our demonstration into the commercial acquisition resource tool. We hope that this tool will enable users to shorten the length of time it takes from solicitation to award when acquiring commercial items, Our goal here was to create this valuable guide, provide a consistent message regarding policies and procedures, hoping to better prepare both industry customers and government partners by describing these essential information and in order to support and evaluate your commercial assertion or determination. When a fully substantiated commercial package is submitted up front, we are really optimistic that the amount of requests for that additional information will decrease, which in turn would then result in a quicker assessment and an overall faster acquisition process. So I'm not sure if we have a couple minutes for any questions, if anyone has any,
We didn't get many questions, but I think it would be helpful to just sort of let people know if they do have questions when they kind of get in here and get working on it, what should they do? Is there a way to ask questions through this DAU tool?
So not exactly through the DAU tool. Probably the best avenue for that would be just going to the commercial item groups, the homepage there that we kind of talked about in the PGI. From there, you can definitely reach out, and we will. I think we're taking kind of the forefront with this as far as taking on any questions or mentorship or answering any of those questions. So reaching out directly to the commercial item group is probably the best avenue for that. And you can do that through our webpage, our homepage.
Great. Well, Jonathan, Lindsay, thank you so much for taking the time to, first of all, put this all together, you and your team, and then to run through it with us so that we can all get value out of this thing. With no other questions, we'll give everybody 2 minutes back on their day so they can get in here and start looking through this. And we appreciate it. Thank you both.
Thank you, Frank.
thank you.